On this week's podcast, we are talking with licensed Reiki Master teacher Tracey Sullivan, and we're talking this week about Chapter 3 of the Reiki Business Books, which is all about the obstacles and the things that can get in the way of sharing Reiki with others, whether that's through a business or however you need to share it. So I'm so glad you guys have all joined us today. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that I have a full lineup of licensed level 1 and 2 and master class, as well as level 1 and 2 and master animal Reiki classes coming up online in March in the Australian friendly time zone, which means evenings. These are online classes, so it's evenings in North America and early mornings in Australia. And also in Asia and some of the other spots. So hopefully if that time works for you, you can join us. We'd love to have you. And in May, I'll be teaching my very first hybrid class, which is a combination of online and in person. And those will be in the Atlantic time zone. And some of you who've been wanting to visit the farm can come and join us here. So I'll look forward to seeing you. And that is a full lineup of the level 1 and 2 masters for both Usui Reiki and Animal Reiki. And it's actually followed by a Karuna Reiki class, as well as animal communication. And so hopefully you can join us for those. Tracey, what do you have coming up?
So I have an Animal Reiki 1 and 2 class coming up next weekend. That would be February 19th and 20th, I believe. And then in March, the second weekend in March, I have a Usui Holy Fire 3 Reiki 1 and 2 class.
Nice.
And in April, so those are both online. In April, I'm going to be teaching at the Northeastern Reiki Retreat in Lake George, New York. I'm teaching a Reiki 1 and 2 class. So that's actually going to be my first in-person class that I'll be teaching since COVID started. So
Wow.
I'm excited about that and going to the retreat as well. And then I have a master class, which is actually before that, the weekend before that. I can't remember the exact dates.
That's okay.
But
we'll put a link to your website so people can find it.
Okay, thanks, Pam. So I have the master class in April as well, and July, the weekend of July 16th, I believe, I'm teaching a Reiki 1 and 2 class in Cape May, New Jersey.
Oh,
so
wow.
That's in person. So if you're down there in that area, I'd love to have you join us. And that's all I have on my schedule for right now, Pam. Thank you.
You're welcome. I was going to ask you, do you know if the retreat is full or are they still accepting people?
Oh, no, they're still accepting people.
So
The early bird pricing is not valid anymore, but they're still accepting people. And there's Carolyn Musial is teaching a master class there as well.
Wow.
And we're both doing a presentation at the retreat. And there's some other classes there too. So there's a lot going on at this retreat up in Lake George, New York, which is a really beautiful area. So if anybody's, interested in that, I can't remember their website name, but I guess I could send it to you, Pam.
I was going to say, let's include their website in the links, and if that way, if people they could attend and see.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay. I love Reiki retreats. They're one of the most wonderful ways to just meet like-minded people and to know your connection with Reiki and with Source. Mm-hmm. So I really
absolutely.
Yeah. Tracey, thank you for being here today. I know how busy you are, and I didn't really introduce you much aside to say that you are a licensed Reiki master teacher with the ICRT, and today we'll be talking about Chapter 3 in the Reiki Business Book. This is the launch of the Reiki Business Book. And I just, before we begin, want to invite everybody to just bring your hands together in Gasho and to activate your Reiki energy and bringing in any symbols. And just breathe. Noticing the enlightened beings that are here to support us today. And I just invite everybody listening to look into your heart and to ask yourself if you would like to share the gift of Reiki with others. And that can be through a business or through family or friends. It doesn't have to be formal. But if the answer is yes, that you are interested in sharing Reiki with others, I just invite you through the course of this podcast to just allow any obstacles that would get in your way to come to the surface, to be released. I invite you to think about why you would enjoy sharing Reiki with others. What has Reiki done in your life and for you that you would like to share? Has it brought you back to a sense of wonder? Belief in magic? Has it helped you become empowered, healed, released from fear, anxiety, and worry and stress? Has it healed someone you love? Is it a beautiful part of your daily life? Whatever Reiki is to you, that usually forms the basis of why we wish to share it with others. So during the course of this podcast, as you allow any blocks or barriers, obstacles to come up to the surface to be released, I invite you to just allow the why to settle in and around you. And I want to thank you for being the beautiful light that you are in the world today. We are blessed to be of a lineage of light bringers, creating wellness on the earth. Ahomatak Wewasan. Namaste and Amen.
Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome. It was nice to reconnect with the why, actually. I guess I hadn't done that in a little while, but for me, Reiki just had such a big impact on every aspect of my life that I had to share it. It wasn't even a question. It was just deep within me. How can you not share this beauty with others? And what was it like for you, Tracey? What was your why? What brought you into wanting to share Reiki with others?
First, I just want to thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Pam. I'm one of your biggest fans, so it's a real honor for me to be here. Back in 2010, I believe it was, I went through a really heartbreaking experience that really threw me off kilter in my life. I had no idea of what Reiki was, never thought about going to a Reiki class or anything like that. So my first experience with Reiki was that I was trying to find something that I could help another person with. So my intention was to help someone else. So I Googled healing or whatever I Googled at that time. And the first thing that came up was Reiki. And I Googled then Reiki classes in Connecticut. And Tanya Tyler was the teacher that came up. She's in Mystic, Connecticut. I called her, and she has an interesting way of teaching where she only teaches one person at a time. And she just schedules them as she has time and as they contact her. So it's the perfect situation for me at that time. So I called her, and I had my class scheduled for that Saturday. And I went and I had the attunement and my first Reiki session ever. So I had no idea. We were just sitting there talking, and there was no like the history of Reiki and how Reiki heals and all that stuff. She's very intuitive. I know in hindsight, looking back. And at some point she said to me, I think you're ready for your attunement. So it was during that day, it was that day that my life really took a drastic turn. And I really didn't know at the time how impactful that was going to be for me for my entire future. But the pain that I was feeling on that day subsided. And before, when I went there, I just really felt hopeless. And when I left there, I felt like a different person. And I didn't know why. I didn't know anything about Reiki. I just had the attunement and the Reiki session. So it was at that point, my first experience with Reiki, that I thought, there's definitely something to this, and I need to learn as much as I can, so I can in turn try to help other people with this. So a month later, I took Reiki 2, and after that class, I looked to see, Googled again, trying to find out who knows the most about Reiki, and William Rand kept coming up. We know that there's quite a few people out there who are very prominent in the Reiki world, but William Rand was the name that kept coming up for me. And I looked at where he teaches and when he taught. And exactly 6 months after I took Reiki 2, and in Glens Falls, New York, which I live in Connecticut, so he was going to be there in perfect timing. So I signed up for his class. And after I took his class, a week later, I taught my first Reiki 1 student. And
Holy
it was one of the girls that I worked with at the time. And I have been teaching since then. So that was 2010 or 2011 by that time. And right away, when I looked at the ICRT website, I saw the licensed teacher program. And at that time, I thought, I really didn't think that I would be able to ever do something like that. And so I kept teaching. And at some point, years later, it just instinctually, I applied, and I was accepted. And so I continued to build my practice. And the whole time that I was doing this, I had always worked full time. So I've always had a practice and a full-time job in addition to my practice. And this might be getting a little bit ahead, Pam, but I started recently to look at, in the past couple of years, to look at my job, whether it be, I worked at Yale New Haven Hospital when I first became a Reiki practitioner. And then, as you know, I took a job with GE as a clinical application specialist. So during that time with GE, I started to look at my whole life as part of my Reiki practice, and my job with GE is like a portion, like a satellite part of my whole job. So I started to look at my whole life as part of my Reiki practice. And that, I would say, is the thing that has really helped me in my practice, like my actual real practice.
Tracey, that's exactly what in chapter 1 I tried to get to, is that so often people think of a Reiki business as, okay, I'm going to be doing sessions and teaching classes, but really it doesn't have to be that. Like, it really, in chapter 1 and 2, I really work hard to try to get people to figure out what the best practice is for them. And maybe at first it's just teaching a few friends, or maybe it's just learning how to talk about Reiki. Like I was saying during a Reiki share recently, it took me about 6 or 7 years to figure out what to say when somebody said, "Oh, you're a Reiki
I
practitioner,
know.
that's Reiki."
I know, right?
So I try to walk people through a lot of those obstacles and those things in the book. And because but I really love how you put that it's your whole life, that it's because really the purpose of Reiki, when I was in a meditation once with William Rand, one of the people came back and she said, "Oh, I didn't want to come back." And he said, "Oh, you didn't go high enough. Go a little higher and bring that energy back with you." And I really realized that it's one thing to go in meditation and go somewhere else, but the really important thing, and the thing that Reiki allows us to do, is to bring the divine energy into our daily lives, like with us into our everyday life. So like you, I live, eat, and breathe Reiki. Everything that I do is Reiki, whether I'm working with the horses or my essential oils or parenting my children or with my spouse. Anything that I do, Reiki is woven into it. And so there are so many options for a career with Reiki.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tracey, I'll just give people a quick background. I know most of that I was guided to write this book after being in Heathrow Airport after COVID-19 happened. And I just felt the panic and the chaos all around me. And I realized something that Colleen Benelli said quite a while ago. I think you were at that meeting, Tracey. It was during the Reiki retreat. And she said that her dream was to have a Reiki practitioner in every family. And I remember, and I remember hearing that, and I was skeptical, but that's not, gosh, Colleen, I think that's a little bit overreaching. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. And I remember looking around myself at Heathrow Airport saying, oh my God, she was right. Every family needs somebody who does Reiki in it. And how can we do that? And I saw that through the Reiki mentoring course, and then through the Reiki mentoring course, I saw with the book, if more Reiki practitioners could release the obstacles and could understand how to get out there in the world in whatever capacity
Absolutely.
for them. It doesn't have to look like what I do or like what you do. It needs to be for you, that more and more people could be reached, so that eventually maybe every family would have a Reiki practitioner in it. And so, Tracey, we're focused on chapter 3 today. And I think you mentioned you had a chance to have a look at it. What did you find? What did you think when you looked through chapter 3 about releasing the obstacles?
There were, well, to start, I love the way that you have the chapter set up, where you present multiple obstacles that could be possible for any one of us. And you get the idea that the obstacles can present to different people in different ways. And with your personal experiences as examples, one of them was money. That when I was reading about the obstacle of money, I always thought that I didn't really have that obstacle. And after, it was funny, like after reading your this chapter and reading about your example of how you felt that you had a hard time charging money for your sessions,
I did.
I thought, well, I didn't, but I had a full-time job, and I realized that the pressure of, I would always charge like less than you really should for a Reiki session, and never acknowledged the fact that I was doing that because I had that same obstacle in my way. I didn't acknowledge it because I had a full-time job, and I didn't have to acknowledge that and work through it. So by reading that, it just clicked, because I had an experience recently where I gifted something to another person, and they wanted to gift something back to me, and it was a Reiki session. And I knew that this person was having financial problems, or maybe not problems, but financial issues.
Yeah.
And I said, no, that's okay. I'll pay for it, because I thought I was like helping them. But really, I was not allowing them to be able to use money, which is energy, use that energy in the way that they could. It was like I was like taking control of the situation and not allowing them, not giving them control of their own situation. And I think you even talked about something like that in your book, in this chapter. And then at the end of the chapter, the meditation to address these things, I just think that's such a benefit to the book, to present things, your own experiences, multiple situations, obstacles, and then a way to address the ones that could possibly be interfering in anybody's desire to have a Reiki practice, whatever that looks like for them. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, Pam. I'll definitely read it again more deeply, because we both know the more times the more times you are confronted with something, or you read something, or like you take a class or something like that, the deeper you go and the more meaning you draw from it. So
we know, as I sat down and I thought about so many of the obstacles that I faced, and I tried to put myself too in the shoes of some of my students and clients that are trying to get out there and start their own businesses. And one of the ones that really showed up to me was, who am I to be a Reiki master or a healer or a teacher? And I keep thinking of the first time I met William Rand and I mispronounced my name 3 times. And I told him I was Pam Allen-LeBlanc, and then Pam Allen-LeBlanc, and then Pam Allen-LeBlanc. And I finally got it right on the 3rd time. I said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Rand, I'm just so nervous to be here." And he said, "Why are you nervous?" And I didn't even think. I blurted out with what I call my pathological honesty. Just because Reiki masters are wonderful and amazing people, and I'm just me. And so, and that I can't tell you how many, like, that was really very real, that whole imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not perfect. How can I be a Reiki master if I'm not perfect? Who do you think you are? I showed up. Who do you think you are, going to study with one of the most famous Reiki masters in the world? He's going to take one look at you and say you're not ready, and say, "Go home, little girl." You're not, then you're in the wrong class. You're not supposed to be here. And there's so many things. The difficulty charging money for doing something spiritual. What if you fail? What if you succeed? Do I know enough to do this? Do I know how to start a business? What if I don't have clairvoyance? That shows up a lot. Like, what? But I'm not clairvoyant. And I had that show up in a Q&A that I just did about the book. And one of the students said, "Look, most of the Reiki masters in my region charge this much, but they also advertise that they're clairvoyant. And I think I need to charge less because I'm not clairvoyant." And I said, "Oh my gosh." I said, "First of all, like, I am clairvoyant, but secondly, I often don't share a lot of that information in sessions, because that's not what people are seeing me for. If they're not booking a clairvoyant session, they're booking a Reiki session. And personally, I don't like sessions where I'm getting a lot of clairvoyant information. I really just want a Reiki session. So please charge the same. Don't undervalue yourself." But so many of these obstacles can crop up, and there's negative self-talk and self-worth issues, and all of this stuff seems to make its way to the surface when we're thinking that we're ready to go and share Reiki. What are some of the obstacles that you found that you had to overcome, Tracey?
The first one was my fear of what people were going to think. And that's one of the ones I saw on your list. And that's the one that in the beginning, like looking back when I first was starting out, I would say that would have been number one for me. And the reason is because I was working in a hospital, and nobody ever talked about Reiki, where I work in nuclear medicine, which is diagnostic radiology and very science-minded people. And I did not tell anybody that I took a Reiki class. It was one of my coworkers who was like a friend of mine, who one of our other coworkers had a headache, or she was like upset about something. And my friend yelled across like the department to me, "Tracey, why don't you give Lori Reiki?" And I cringed inside. And when I think about this, like now it's just so natural years later, and I don't have any circumstances where I feel uncomfortable talking about Reiki or offering Reiki. And I'm so grateful for that. But at the time, I did it, but I had the fear. I had a fear. I don't even know, Pam, really what that fear was, if they weren't gonna like me, or I don't even know. It was like such a fear, it's fear of the unknown. The more that people approached me about Reiki, like giving a session, so I would go into one of our little injection rooms with my coworkers and give them like 10 minutes of Reiki. And that was what no words can describe. As we already talked about, it's so hard to be able to describe Reiki to somebody, especially when you're new to it. So this was something that were taking the place of any words that I could have come up with to describe this to this group of people. They were asking for it. I was giving people like 10 minutes of Reiki, and they were having really great results from it. And from there, as I created many like presentations that I provided for diagnostic radiology in all different areas of the hospital, and ended up actually teaching Reiki there at the hospital, which I continue to do. So that was my greatest obstacle when I first started, is fear of what people would think. And along with that is another one that you have listed, and that was like a knowledge-based thing. Like I somehow, for some reason, felt that I needed to know every little detail about everything about Reiki. And then that was leading into, I read this book and it talked about Buddhism and so I started going down that path. So I always felt like that I didn't know enough. And that is something that kind of helped me to recognize that this is not only something that I do to myself in Reiki, in my Reiki practice, but in my entire life. So Reiki, through my Reiki practice, showed me that this is the way that I view myself in my entire life, that I don't ever feel like I know enough. Or I actually went through, I think for a large portion of my life, thinking that I wasn't like the most intelligent person. And it was a real eye opener. And I don't think that I ever would have recognized that about myself without having started my Reiki practice. So the obstacles that you list existed there within me, and it was the Reiki itself that made me see those obstacles and helped me to heal them through the practice of Reiki. So my Reiki practice, even though I wasn't a full-time Reiki practitioner, that's why I started to look at my life, everything in my life, as part of my Reiki practice, because it affects everything in your life. And because we are like one total being, we don't have like little sections of ourself. We can't really section ourselves off. We are one total being, and our thoughts that we think affect all aspects of our life. So those are the obstacles, Pam, that I resonated with the most, looking back to when I first started my Reiki practice.
And Tracey, one of the things that has always amazed me about you, because I'm one of your biggest fans too,
Thanks, Pam.
that I remember I hadn't known you very long, and I met you at a Reiki retreat meeting of potential LRMTs, and as people that were licensed Reiki master teachers and licensed Reiki master teachers in training, we were taking part in the meeting, and you said you just wanted us to know that you not only did you start your Reiki practice, but you also became a licensed Reiki master teacher with 1,000+ hours of training that entails, all while holding down a full-time job. And I don't know very many people who've done that. And in fact, it makes me realize I don't think I put time in as an obstacle, but I think I may need to, when I'm editing, add that into that chapter.
I actually added that to your list on my paper. I wrote down time and like organization, but I think that might fall into one of your other categories actually, but
No,
sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's exactly where I was leading with this, Tracey. It always amazed me that you, with your organizational skills and whatnot, when granted, I guess I always have held, I guess I run 3 businesses, so I guess I'm a little bit like you, but I had a little more flexibility. I chose to travel. I didn't have to travel as much as you did. And I certainly didn't have anybody saying you have to be here for 40 hours. Like, I was my own boss when I went through the LRMT program. So I am going to add those, and I'd love you to expand on those a little bit. I'll add those in your paragraph, because how did you do that? Like, time must have been an obstacle for you with your full-time job. Can you tell us?
Yeah, so especially, of course, when I was going through the LRMT program, this was a huge obstacle for me because, Pam, you may think that I'm organized, or you may think that if you're doing this, you have to be an organized person, but no. And that was a huge obstacle for me.
Okay.
The timing and being organized and procrastination.
Oh boy.
That I think I could lump all those 3 into a single category because they all seem to like go together. For me, they did anyways. So what I had to do to overcome that is I had a couple situations where I had people had to reach out to me and not like yell at me, but I ran into a couple times where I had a problem, and I learned that when that happens, it's not about the other person, because at first I was like upset and I thought about like leaving the program and stuff like that. And then I guess it was Reiki that made me focus this on myself, because it's always us, right? You can be in any situation that there exists, and you have the choice of how you're going to react to it, what you're going to think about it, and what you're going to do about it. So how I resolved that obstacle, or how I continue to resolve that obstacle, because it continues to be a thing for me, is I looked at myself and looked at what I was thinking when I did have some things to complete for the ICRT, and I was just putting it off, and it turned out it was like a problem with procrastination. So what I would do is just make myself do it right away, whatever the task was. And I'm talking about like physical tasks, like scanning paperwork in or whatever. And another thing I did was really concentrate on learning how to do things in a more efficient manner. Like, instead of scanning in one paper at a time, like be able to like know how to just scan in a whole file. So I'd be able to send in all my paperwork at once. And I know it might not seem like a big deal,
Oh no,
but it's a very, it became very stressful for me during that time. So, but it helped me to change that and to become a more organized person and to help it, and it helped me to stop procrastinating and doing things like when I had the opportunity to do it. So think that I think that's all I wanted to say about that. But did that answer your question, Pam?
completely. And I'm like, yep, I'm going to add all of those obstacles, and I'll credit you and I'll put it right up to it. But
Oh gosh, yeah,
I
no
experienced that
worries
too.
about that.
I experienced that too. And I think that the program, the ICRT, the LRMT program is so intensive that it brings up any cracks in the foundation, doesn't it?
Hmm.
And I also had some cracks around procrastination and around efficiencies. And I noticed that I'm really building a lot of efficiencies in. And even writing this book, I had to, it's such a large undertaking that
Yeah.
you had to figure out a way. Procrastination was really in place there, and you had to be, and so I actually have a little timer device that keeps track of time for me, and I say I can do anything for 25 minutes. So I sit down to do the most difficult task. I set the time for 25 minutes. You know what happens? It dings and I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to keep going. Because once you get into it, you realize it wasn't that bad. It's just overcoming
Yeah.
it. So yeah, these are all just fantastic obstacles that I'm sure a lot of people have also experienced. Are there any other obstacles that you've seen that, I guess you already mentioned some of the ones that I didn't include. Was there anything else that you've seen like it within your students that show up quite a lot, or?
Um, not a lot that is outside of the obstacles that you listed here. The ones that you list are really the primary ones that I've seen. The one with the timing and all that was the one that stood out for me as one that I experienced that I didn't see on there. But sometimes it might be have a different meaning for you, and I thought perhaps it was in a different chapter of your book, maybe.
No, I forgot all about that. So I'm going to be adding that, Tracey. And I'm just thinking about those cracks in the foundation that show up whenever we decide to make a change, whenever we decide to step forward into our spiritual path, our soul's purpose. And there's usually things that come up that are a little uncomfortable, I've noticed. And I called them a crack in the foundation. Something, I think what it is that our outer world always resembles our inner. So when you had those difficulties arise, there was probably something within you that hadn't resolved, or that needed to be resolved. Like you said, you focused it inwardly, and it helped you heal that. And it can be much more comfortable just to ignore it and carry on.
Yeah, but we both know it always comes back. It'll show up somewhere else, and probably in a more profound way.
I love that. Well,
I've experienced that too.
what did they say? If you don't get the taps, you'll get a shove. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what is some advice that you would have for people in overcoming their obstacles? Tracey, and is there anything else you'd like to add before we move into our exercises and meditation today?
The thing that I have found that helps me the most to release all these obstacles that can really come into play from time to time for all of us is to allow myself to be still throughout the day, no matter where I am. I have my job was very busy where I travel and I'm dealing with a lot of different people. And I think I mentioned that it was very stressful for me the first year. And I mentioned earlier, I had this problem with thinking that I wasn't as intelligent as I would like myself to be. So this job really in Reiki, the combination of the job, my applications job and Reiki is what allowed me to look at that in a deep way. And again, Pam, when we were just saying if you don't acknowledge something, it always comes back to you. I spent like most of my adult life not acknowledging this. So I had this deep inner guidance to take this job with GE. And now in hindsight, I understand that I took it because I learned that I was really had this view of myself that was so not true. It showed me that I am so much more than I thought I was. So by being still each day and in every moment of the day, I'm able to remember that about myself and remember like who I am. And because when we get too busy, like who we are really escapes us. And we're looking at ourselves through the eyes of somebody else often. So the way I'm able to do that is by spending time each day in some type of meditation. And one little thing that I thought was funny is the latest thing, and this is when I'm transitioning jobs right now. So I've come like full circle. And the reason I think that these job opportunities came through to me at this time is because of my stillness and my comfort level with myself. So I learned the lesson that I needed to learn in this job. And this is all because of Reiki. Like I wouldn't have had this awareness, I don't think, of about myself without my practice of Reiki. So it's funny that I took my first Reiki class 12 years ago now, and it could have been that my experience, very profound experience in that class, which today is affecting me most today, is how I see it. I don't know if that makes sense, but it started a whole stream of activities within me that has transpired in this stillness now, where I was presented with an opportunity where I don't have to travel anymore for work and I have more free time. And I think it was when I started to believe in myself and relax within myself and released these obstacles, overcame these obstacles. My life began to become, I don't know if I want to say easier, but something along more aligned with what I truly want. And it's your chapter, it relates very beautifully to this chapter in your book, what I'm experiencing in my life right now, how Reiki has helped me overcome many obstacles to be able to have a beautiful Reiki practice and be able to work at the same time.
Oh, that's amazing. That's wonderful, Tracey. Thank you for sharing that. I love it. Well, for everybody,
Yeah, thank you. You're
yeah.
welcome.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you and for everybody who's listening. I wonder if we can take a few moments now and get in touch with your obstacles and at the same time also with your opportunities. So I'd like you, if you have a pen and paper handy, that would be great. If not, just put us on pause and come back to us. Because I'd like you to think about what you'd like to do with Reiki. Would you like to start a practice or teach a friend or do a session for an animal, or just be able to feel comfortable talking about Reiki with others? Think about what you'd like to do And when you think about that, I invite you to with your Reiki energy flowing as it is, just stop for a few moments, asking Reiki, what are your obstacles? And just pay attention to the images, words, feelings, or understandings that you receive. And when you feel ready, just grab a pen and paper and write them down. And don't give it too much thought. Go ahead and tap into your instinct and use some automatic writing if you'd wish. And just write as complete of a list as possible of anything you can think of that might get in your way and make it difficult for you to share Reiki with others. There's things you think about later. That's no problem. Just add them to the list. But for now, just see if you can completely exhaust every block and barrier, or even if there's a person in your life who might get in the way because they wouldn't agree with what you're doing, you can include them there too. So just go ahead and write a list of obstacles. And even as we continue, if you need to hit pause and take a little bit more time with your obstacles, that's okay. And now part 2 of our exercise is to identify the opportunities. So just give some thought and write down your responses to the following questions just as quickly as you can. If I could do anything and there were 0 limits on the possibilities for me with the direction of my life purpose, what are the top 3 things that I would love to accomplish with Reiki? And now we'll move into a meditation today to just help you release some of the obstacles so that you can begin to experience the opportunities. Close your eyes and bring your hands into Gasho, inviting the Reiki energy to flow through and around you. Imagine that there's a beautiful light coming down from the highest heavens, flowing through your hands and into your heart, the gift of love. Imagine a beautiful light coming from the heart of the earth, flowing up through your hands and into your heart, the gift of love and of connection to the earth and to the material world. And just notice as your divine consciousness aligns with your human consciousness, and on your next breath, they become one within you. And place a hand on your heart center and one on your solar plexus. And just begin to release the obstacles that you've acknowledged. Maybe you struggle with money, or with confidence, fear, or the unhealed ego. Maybe you don't feel that you know enough. You struggle with self-doubt and self-worth. Maybe social conditioning is getting in the way. Maybe past experiences or past life experiences, a fear of being judged or persecuted. Maybe you don't have the time or space to move forward right now. And if that's the case, it's okay. It's okay to just fit in what you can. Maybe you feel surrounded with clutter. Maybe there's something in your shadow self, something you've repressed and pushed down that needs to be addressed. And whatever it is that might be holding you back, maybe it's a feeling of overwhelm or a feeling of not knowing how to move forward. Just stay with us in these podcasts and we'll walk you through those steps. We've been there. Maybe you're worried about disappointing someone or their expectations on you. Maybe you're not really sure if you do want to move forward with this. And if that's the case, that's all right too. But whatever's holding you back, just release it now into the light with love. And as you do that, just pull your own energy in close to you. Ask it to come and just skim your skin. And just feel yourself letting go of the expectations of others and any energy, ideas, opinions, expressions that you might be holding on behalf of others, and just let them fall away from you into the earth. Knowing that God and the earth will use these energies to create a force for good, whatever that may be. Let go of some of the expectations that you may have on yourself and some of the pressure that you may have placed upon yourself. It's not necessary to be perfect, to be a Reiki practitioner or a Reiki master. In fact, being a Reiki master is about allowing Reiki to master you. And in your sessions and in your classes, if there's something you don't know, it's perfectly acceptable to say so. I don't know, but I'll look that up and I'll get back to you. Or I'll ask someone. And we don't need to have all the answers. We don't need to be perfect. If we needed to be perfect, there wouldn't be very many of us. So just let go of some of these lofty ideals and high expectations. If by sharing Reiki with one person, you have an impact on their life, then that is good and you've done what needed to be done. If you're guided from that experience to share again or with more people, then we encourage you to do that. And if you're already into your Reiki journey, it doesn't mean there are no obstacles. And so we release all obstacles with love. And any pieces of ourselves that were caught in fear or anxiety or frustration or overwhelm or stress are returned to us now. Or grief or anger or anything at all, our soul is restored and complete and whole. Our chakras are balanced and aligned. They're aligned with Reiki, and they are aligned with us. our personality and our perceptions and perspectives. And so you may find yourself now ready to move forward on the path of sharing Reiki with others and toward what will ultimately become your own enlightenment. Thank you for being the light that you are in the world today. We are blessed to be of a lineage of light bringers, and we are blessed to be here together. Hundreds of us, all at the same time, listening, of the same heart and of the same mind, with a willingness to say yes to Reiki, to step out of our comfort zones and to be a force of love and light on the world, on the planet today when it so needs us. We thank you for being here today, and we thank you for saying yes. You are our brothers and sisters in this work, and we appreciate you. Namaste and Amen.
It's beautiful, Pam. Oh, I have a tear in my eye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracey. And I just can't thank you enough. I know how busy you are, and thank you for making time with us, and thank you for being the beautiful light you are in the world.
Oh, Pam, thank you so much as well. I'm very happy to be here, and I feel the same about you. Thank you for writing this book.
You're welcome. I think if it gets more people spreading the light and the love in the world, that it will be worth it, even if just one more person does it. But I do think it may have an opportunity to reach even more people. So it's very divinely guided.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone, for showing up today. I hope you'll join us next week when we'll talk about chapter 4. To be honest, I can't remember what chapter 4 is about. You might be starting.
I'm sure it's great, though.
They're all blending together for me right now.
Pam, I just want to say that I listen to your podcast as I travel a lot for my job.
Yeah.
And I listen to a lot of different podcasts, and you're right up there at the top, honestly. Yeah. So thank you so much. And that's why it's such an honor to be here. So thank you.
Beautiful thing for you to say, even though I can't remember what chapter is next.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, it is about developing your Reiki practice and giving Reiki sessions to others. But I wasn't 100% sure if that was. Tracey, I just want to thank all of the people who joined us today. I hope that you are able to go out and just spread the love and light of Reiki and spread it within your life, your daily lives, and then from there, begin to spread it out to others. Thank you for being who you are. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.